Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video we're breaking down Alien Romulus. After posting our big breakdown on the movie, I've noticed a lot of questions that you guys want answered. So I thought that's what I'd tackle in this video, and I want to go through some of the major things in the movie. Now the first question is, when did Weyland Yutani first know about the Xenomorphs? Ever since the first film released in 1979, there's been the sentiment that the corporation knew about the creatures and that they purposely routed the Nostromo on a path that would bring them near the signal from LV-426. The theory states that though the main mission was to get the minerals, there was either a secondary or primary mission to get the Xenomorph for a test. This is something we discussed in our breakdown on that first movie, shameless plug, and the theory originated because of what we learned of Ash's origins. Ripley tells Dallas she doesn't trust Ash and asks if Dallas has ever worked with him before.
Did you ever ship out with Ash before?
I went out 5 times with another science officer. They replaced him 2 days before we left Thetis with Ash.
So the company clearly did the old switcheroo to put someone on the ship who had their own private mission. Now it's actually thought that the reason Ash went haywire is because of a conflict in his programming. It's theorized that he had a prime directive to protect the crew, but also wanted to bring back the creature no matter the cost. Because of this, the programming slowly became buggy, and this is what caused him to go crazy and start shoving magazines in people's mouths. This movie confirms though that retrieving the Xenomorph was the original plan. This is why we have the Romulus Remus looking for the ship and any samples of the Xenomorph. Now this is something that's long been known about the Xenomorph in the expanded lore. I picked up the Dark Horse originally as Omnibus the other day, and early on they had the alien in space with the characters being baffled that this creature can survive in a vacuum. Look at the art, you can see it there. This is what happened with Big Chap, which is the name of the Xenomorph in the first film. In our initial breakdown we pointed out how you could still see it moving about as it was blasted away by the ship. I know a lot of these Dark Horse comics aren't canon anymore because like this one's got Newton Hicks in it, yeah? And this is what they thought the engineers were. Bloody big elephant guy, that's everyone's mate. So it was a theory without releasing even before Alien 3, but this theory's now been confirmed, though it's taken about 45 years to get it. But we have a theory confirmed, that's a theory time, right? Theory time! It took a lot of theory time, but we did it. And if you want to celebrate this big Theory Time win, then check out our merch store right below the video. Not only do we have our Theory Time hoodies, but we also have a Chestburster t-shirt to celebrate the release of Alien Romulus. Definitely check them out if you love the movie, and it's the best way to support the channel. Now another question I've seen asked is how it survived the gigantic explosion caused by the Nostromo. Well, the Xeno was in Ripley's shuttle, which managed to get away from the blast radius. The creature was then fired out, which is when it floated back to the wreckage and hit the debris. It was cocooned from this point and then eventually found by Weyland Yutani. Now, I have seen some confusion over what it is they were really after and what the black goo is. First introduced in Prometheus, we get this touched upon when Rook brings up how Weyland died. There's even some notes from the Prometheus score played along with the mention of Prometheus. Weyland was a dying man who wanted to achieve immortality, and this is why he set out looking for the engineers. Unfortunately, one smashed his head on the like button, and the rest of the mission went to hell. Either way, the scientists aboard the Romulus Remus managed to reverse engineer the black goo from Big Chap. This is because the big guy came from an egg on the engineer's ship on LV-426. This is a different ship and planet to what we saw in Prometheus, but they likely carried the same cargo. Either way, the next question you probably have is, what is the black goo? Well, the liquid was first introduced during the opening of Prometheus when we saw both its creative and destructive powers. The liquid is extremely chaotic, with it possessing both things that can rapidly create life extremely quickly or destroy it just as fast. It can deteriorate and build cells, with it altering DNA and mutating it on a mass scale. New species can be created along with mutations of existing ones. This is how the Xenomorph was created in the first place, and it's also how the offspring's made. Most of these creatures all share characteristics we'd see commonplace in the Xenomorphs, such as the Hammerpede, which has acid for blood. The Xenomorph is the ultimate being built from the black goo, with it being a near immortal creature that is a true survivor. I believe this is why we see the Shrine of One in Prometheus, as ultimately that life form's viewed like a god. The majority of the creatures featured in both Prometheus and Covenant were proto-Xenomorphs, so it seems like that's the ultimate goal. But you don't always get that, and this is why the offspring's created after Kay injects herself with the goo when going back to the ship. Now why the baby thing? What the hell is that? Why it looks like an engineer? That could have been explained in a comment on our video by Becca0668. They theorized that the black goo was experimented on originally to create a being that would be better adapted for space survival. Humans are made from engineered DNA, which we saw at the start of Prometheus, and the better adapted version of both would be able to travel throughout space without the need for a suit. See, we're all tying it back to that vacuum thing. The offspring seems like they're able to survive in a vacuum as well, and they could also appear like an engineer because they have traces of their DNA coming directly from a human fetus. I think. Now, another big question I've seen people asking is, why did the Xenomorph save Rain, especially after just killing Tyler? Well, this comes down to the need to build a hive that exists within all Xenomorphs. The Xenomorph's prime objective is to capture prey so it can then be taken to the hive and infected with a facehugger so further Xenomorphs can be created. The Xenomorph is on a what's best for the hive mission, which makes it the perfect opposite to Andy, who's someone who wants what's best for the company. I love the way they kind of inject that thematically, and it is a nice thing if you watch this video and then watch the movie again, they're like, Kevin Spoiler's a clever guy. And I must remember to subscribe. And this idea of taking people off is something that's been there since the beginning of the franchise, with the creature constantly capturing and taking people away. In the director's cut of Alien, we saw Ripley coming across the crew who'd all been strung up to the walls. So the Xenomorph grabbed Rain for this reason, as there was also a facehugger nearby. The reason that it didn't do this with Tyler is because it recognized the threat of him having a weapon, and there weren't any facehuggers nearby. Xenomorphs are also able to recognize threats, and this is something we also saw in Aliens. There, when Ripley was going to escape the nest, she pointed a flamethrower at the eggs. The Queen got the drones to back off, and I feel like it's a similar thing here with Tyler, where they recognized the threat. At this point, they also had a lot of Xenomorphs, so the focus wasn't on replacing them. Now, with this mostly going down in the nest, people have been wondering if there was a Queen on the ship. Probably not, because apparently Ridley Scott doesn't like the Queen. He's tried to steer things away from that idea, and with him producing the movie, there's no bloody queen mate. In the original Alien, the process was to actually turn people into eggs, which is why they were secreted to the wall. However, this scene was deleted, and thus when Cameron took over the sequel, he was the one who put the queen in place. Ridley hates it though, even though it's like the coolest big boss in all of cinema history, but yeah, for whatever reason, the guy doesn't like it. However, this also ties into Bjorn's death, and the Xenomorph we see in its own egg that looks a bit like what your dad saw before you were conceived. Shabow! Now, this cocoon is helping the Xenomorph to grow, and it's almost womb-like. The creature came from Navarro, but it barely had time to gestate. The embryo was then implanted, but the facehugger was quickly removed, and thus it's sort of like a premature Xenomorph. Therefore, it has to cocoon itself in order to grow further, and this gives it a protective environment. Interestingly, they froze the facehugger in order to remove it, which is something that was suggested in the original. Parker asked why they couldn't just freeze it, but this was shut down by Ash, because he's a company man, and looking back at it, yeah, great attention to detail there. Had they done this though, the creature would have still burst forth from Kane, and likely have cocooned itself in its own egg thing. However, it would have been vulnerable, and this is why Ash didn't want to go that route. Again, this is something Ridley did instead of doing the Queen, and here the aliens can create their own eggs and cocoons. Now, when fighting the Queen in Aliens, Ripley famously said, "Get away from her, you bitch," which is something that Andy also says. I wish they'd not done it. However, we are trying to explain why this movie is the way it is, even though that line's being said before the events of Aliens. Now, after doing a second watch through of it yesterday, I noticed that Bjorn called Andy bitch on several occasions throughout the movie. So right, yeah, I think Andy registered it as an insult and then said bitch, as that was the first thing that came to mind due to him being called it so much throughout the movie. And I expect my check from Disney for defending the worst line in the movie. In space, no one can hear you shill. What do you mean I'm not getting paid because I signed up to a free trial of Disney Plus and didn't read the terms and conditions, and Bob Iger can now kill my entire family and I can't sue him because it's all in the terms and conditions? What? Whew. Now, beyond that, you might also be wondering who Rook is and why Weyland didn't take the ship before the group of teens did. We know Rook is actually from the expanded lore and that he was a stable mate of Bishop. Bishop is also one of the company's most trusted machines, which is why he's the one who was sent out for the events of Aliens. Rook is very much his predecessor here, going out beforehand to handle this Xenomorph encounter. As for the company, they had been notified about the ship, but it takes 6 months for the message to reach them. They've then got to mount up and head out there, so the time discrepancy gave the teens a chance to go in. Now, these next points aren't so much questions and answers, they're more just pointing out things in the movie. The facehuggers are indeed blind, which means they react to heat and movement. This is why flares work so well in distracting them, and the Xenomorphs also operate in a similar way. The Xenomorphs are thought to have eyes under their visors though, and we see through their point of view when playing as them in Alien vs Predator. However, they're also drawn to heat and sound, which again is why flares are so effective. And it's because it was the 70s and everyone was wearing flares, hey. Now flares are something that you had to rely on in Alien Isolation, which gets some really cool nods in the movie. This includes the phone booths which act as save points, and they're dotted about the Romulus Remus. These are actually put in place by the production team to highlight that something's about to go down. Rewatching the movie, I noticed about 4 throughout that all appeared before a big action scene happened. Either way, my final favourite detail happens when Andy's eyes roll back and we see the Weyland Yutani logo imprinted on the whites. In horror movies, eyes rolling back is a sign of possession, and the logos here show he's been possessed by the company. Great little detail, and shoutouts to Nick De Semelian for spotting that. Sorry for butchering your name there. I know you work at Empire, and I would love to have a shout out from you guys, so I'm giving you a shout out if you give me one back. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the movie, so make sure you drop them in the comment section below. Please hit the thumbs up, yeah, don't be a chump, and if you want to support the channel as a member of the Spoiler Society, then please click the join button. For 99 cents a month, or 99 pence, you'll get early access to videos every week, and it goes a massive way towards helping us out. We are working on the Matrix Reloaded right now, and that should be dropping early for members, so if you want to see that before anyone else, then you know what to do. Again, if you want to get some merch, we've also got our t-shirt line located below the video, and that Chestburster t-shirt's available there now. Now if you want something else to watch, we've got our ultimate breakdown of the Alien Quadrilogy, which will be linked on screen right now. We go over Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection, so if you want a big breakdown of all those movies, then head over there after this. Now out of the way, huge thank you for sticking through this video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best mate, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.